Hi and welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about critical thinking today. My name is Melissa Knowles. I'm with Social Studies Services, and I am going to share with you today how to promote inquiry in the elementary classroom through thinking critically. I have been teaching, this is my 17th year, and several grade levels and several different positions. I've been Is that better? Can you see my screen now? Awesome. Thank you for letting me know. I must have accidentally, I didn't realize that it didn't automatically come on, so I appreciate that. So welcome again to Setting the Foundation to Thinking Critically. My name is Melissa Knowles again. I've taught several grade levels from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade, and as a librarian and as a classroom teacher. So I have had a wealth of knowledge and information and experiences with so many different grade levels. However, most of my time has been spent in now kindergarten and also 3rd grade. So I'm hoping that we can have some excellent ideas out there and share together during this webinar. So we'll go ahead and get started. So critical thinking, I think, is something that has been around for a long time and has really stayed the test of time. However, I think now it's becoming more of a forefront and more of something that I find that principals are pushing for students. Deep thinking and inquiry, and now we have makerspaces in our library for students to engage with many materials and sort of create things on their own. Sorry, I'm having to do 2 clicks to get it to turn for some reason. So first off, what is critical thinking? So I liked this idea. I thought it pretty much garnered it in just a very short definition: the thinking in which the thinker improves the quality of their thinking by skillfully analyzing, assessing, and reconstructing it. And I think each of those things are so important. Knowing what you think, which a lot of times in our age group, kids don't really always know what they think because they're being told so much. And then deciding whether their thinking is accurate or true, which is especially important as we're growing citizens. And then reconstructing it, allowing others to change the way we think based on what they share or what they think. We may decide they have a much better idea, or they have something that we hadn't thought of before. So I think this simple sentence really garners critical thinking in what it is. So now that we know what it is, why should we do it in elementary? Well, once again, it helps us to formulate our opinions and our thoughts. We're not just spewing out information, we're actually developing ideas. We also can draw conclusions and determine the outcome of situations. So as we're going throughout our day, we can determine, based on what we already know, maybe something else that would happen. And you can see that we use all of these things in so many different genres. I know that this one is based for social studies. However, it really fits into any of the subject areas. We can also develop connections. So we may have some connections and some prior knowledge and metacognition, all those great words we hear all the time. We're going to develop connections from subject areas to subject areas, from time periods in history to other time periods in history. Also, it helps us to value other people's ideas. And teaching this in elementary school is so important. The sooner we start these things, the better off our kids will be. And I had to add at the bottom, because of the world that we live in now, I think that this thinking critically makes good citizens. It also improves our ideas and the things that in our world, I think, plus going straight to technology and all the things that make our lives easier and more convenient. But I think that critical thinking in elementary school is the utmost important because I think the earlier that we catch them and the earlier that we start them, the better off that they are. They're going to be more used to it. It's not going to be such a chore. I'm not sure about you, but I've had classes that will sit there and just take whatever you give them. And there's very little feedback or very little communication. So really having to draw that out of them, that may be a lot of personality trait, but has been so important to the quality of our year and our learning together. So I hope that you agree with me on using critical thinking and why it is so important. So these are the top things that I wanted to talk about when using critical thinking in your classroom. So how can we apply them? Apply critical thinking right away. So I want to talk about questioning a little bit, about building background, about using information fluency. And as a librarian, this is something that is at the pretty almost the top of what I do each day. Also, problem solve. Then using some other things like role play, speak with pictures, and then to prioritize critical thinking in our lessons. Then I have a few ideas for you, and then I would really love for you to share some ideas. So as you think of things or things pop in your head, some things maybe that you do in your classroom to develop critical thinking skills, if you'll post those in the chat, and then we'll get to those ideas, we'll talk about those. Of course, if you have any other questions or comments as we're going, I'm going to keep an eye on that as we go through. So let's get started. So in lessons, I like to begin with a question. One way is to develop, or one way is to just ask the students, what do you want to learn about? It doesn't even have to be exactly that broad. Maybe you're talking about today was Constitution Day. What do you want to know about the Constitution? And then let them throw out some ideas, and that could then develop your lessons or guide your lessons in how they should go. I believe that as much as possible, all questions should be as open-ended as you feel comfortable with. Not everybody feels really comfortable giving up control to students. And I know it was a challenge for me when I first started, so I completely understand that. But as open-ended as you are comfortable with, while of course still guiding them to meet your objectives and all the things that you have to do during the day. So remember that open-ended questions cannot just be answered with a yes or a no. So it's got to be a question that the students can think about and decide, and there may not even be a right or a wrong necessarily answer to these questions. The second thing is using essential questions. Essential questions, I think, inspire the desire to want to learn more, and also they give students an opportunity to problem solve. So it sort of brings the students to the learning by using essential questions. So as you post your question out there, the students have to figure out the answer to the question, but how they do that is not necessarily the same way or not necessarily the way you planned it. Sometimes they go off in different directions. So having a big, broad question that they're going to answer, and you can even do it unit-wise. You don't have to necessarily do it all lesson-wise. That would be very time-consuming. But if you do it unit-wise, maybe you're talking about a time period in history, and you develop an essential question for that period, then that sort of guides everything to that place. So maybe you could be talking about the Declaration of Independence, and the essential question has something to do with that. Well, the whole learning, as you're learning about the explorers and going through, you're building towards that question. So it also, in my opinion, gives students a little bit of ways to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, I lost it because I accidentally looked. And there's a question there. So are these questions students developing or the teacher? So that is what I like to, as much as possible, allow the students to develop the questions. However, sometimes these questions are teacher guided. So a lot of times when we're developing questions, I will maybe push them a little bit towards where I want them to come out to have their answer directed. But there have been several times that students in my third grade class had a better question than I was thinking, a better guide to where they're going. And that reminds me of exactly what I was thinking just a minute ago. So it sort of creates a mystery to the learning. And it really, that also then engages students in what they're learning. They have sort of a ownership of what they're learning. And so it really guides them. You may want to start with teacher questions that you've created. I know a lot of school systems develop questions that they use in their system. Um, so that would be a fine way to start. But maybe try one or two as you have time of allowing the students to figure out what they want to know. And one way to do that is with brainstorming. I was lucky enough to teach in Mobile County in Alabama, where I'm from, and we had something there that was exactly this type of questioning. So we threw out a question, and that we do a brainstorming. And we were taught, do not take the first few things that they say. Really have them dive deep. Because, the first few things they're going to say are, if you showed them a picture of these question marks, they're going to say, well, I see red, I see green, well, then maybe you may get, I see overlapping or, as they're going, their brain is going and it has to stretch and think a little bit deeper and a little bit harder to come up with something. And that's where you get that really good stuff. Building background. Students cannot develop critical thinking skills if they don't possess the information to do it with. They have to have some knowledge prior to. So using those questions at the end is okay to even present it, especially if it's like going to develop some mystery, or maybe you have the secret question that you show in the third week of the unit. You know, building background, all of that is so important to critical thinking. And you can do this by finding your gaps. So maybe doing some questioning first, that lovely KWL we're so used to, is important because you can find what they already know, where do they need, where do they lack, where do they need to go. You can also review related information using text or videos or former assignments that you've done or homework as you've built up to the critical thinking assignment. But please do not forget how important building background is because they need to make connections as they're developing their critical thinking skills. They need to be able to relate it to things. Oh, I remember that, or this happened in the past. Maybe even some of the skirmishes that happened before the revolution started. Oh, I remember that. So that must have had something to do with why they were so angry with England. So, it's really great when you see that light and you see, oh, that's why on your students' faces. So allowing them to have those opportunities is essential in critical thinking. Information fluency. It's about learning how to dig through knowledge to find the most useful, appropriate facts for solving a problem. And of course, my brain goes straight to fake news. So this is an important skill to teach students now. They're bombarded with so many different things and so many different information where you could have completely opposite opinions or facts. Students need to know how to decipher what's useful, what they actually need. They need to know what's appropriate for what they're trying to solve. So this is definitely a skill that your librarian and media specialist can help you with because I know it is one of our national standards in library. So definitely this is a great opportunity to practice that also in developing good citizens. if they can take something and pick out the important points or the things that are obviously biased, this skill is going to help them in the future very much. So using information fluency in their researching and in the things that they're learning is very important. And you could even take it just step by step. I went ahead and wrote the 5 A's of information literacy, which is to ask, to acquire, to analyze, to apply, and to assess. And when you take an article or some information, if you do these things, if you ask the question, acquire the information, analyze it, apply it, and then see if that information is really useful and appropriate for what you're learning. That pretty much covers the process of what we're doing with determining whether information is true or false. Of course, there are other things like looking at the website and the content, the authors of the website. There are other things like that if you're using something specific, but these 5 A's are a great way to just go through and ensure that this information applies to what you are using. And of course, problem solve. This is one of my favorite things to do. It's also the best way to develop critical thinking groups. To develop critical thinking skills is using problem solving. So in the library, we do a lot of problem solving using our makerspace area. We have Lego projects. We have different things they have to build. I do teach in an all kindergarten school. This is now my second year there because my school changed grade levels, and I ended up staying there. And so we did an activity where they had to find the letters of their name. They had to go and hunt them, and then they had to build something using just these paper cutout letters. So they had developed something that stood up. So there was certain criteria to what they had to come up with. However, how they did that was completely up to them. So it leaves the goal or answer open-ended to build discovery. So using those open-ended questions we talked about, that definitely helps discovery. I have had some amazing things I never would have come up with built and developed. I also love when they work in peer groups, and that they can work by themselves, but still given the opportunity when one of my groups is building a certain Lego project, or we do elf traps in Christmas. If they're building something and someone says, "Oh, how did you do that?" Then they can go and then show that student how they built their part. Students love this. Your students, we now live in a digital age, and so this is perfect for our students because in games they're collaborating, they're working together, they've got to communicate to each other, and a lot of that can translate also into the classroom. So I have found students that are very quiet, don't always show what they know, maybe feel very subpar in many of the subject areas, that their level of confidence increases so much when you're able to show, "Oh, look what you did. That was amazing. Will you show everybody how you did that? Oh, I can't believe you came up with that. Nobody else has even thought of that answer yet." I do a lot of that, just identifying who did a really good job, and especially for our age group, because we have so many different undeveloped little beings there, that I really, some of my super shy kids, I'll really pump up, or a new student comes in, but they did a really good job building something, or had a new way. I've had students change the Lego project directions because something worked better. That's amazing, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So giving them those problem solving, it doesn't have to be necessarily in a project like that. It could also be in one of the ideas that we're going to talk about later. So anyway, I love doing problem solving in the library. It is a very fun day for me, and I have learned so much from students through doing this. Another thing that I love to do is do some role playing. So one thing students can do is they can research characters. Indians, pilgrims. They can identify and explain their points of view. So one way we've done this is they'll choose a conflict, something that happened where people didn't agree. So when the explorers came over, the Indians weren't always happy about that. And the explorers also came over thinking, oh, this is ours. So using having them research it and then look at each group's point of view, then I have them explain that point of view. So we can have one whole group of Indians, one whole group or Native Americans, of explorers or um, colonies, and they have to explain to each other their point of view. It's a little bit like a debate, except they're not necessarily going against each other. They're just explaining. This has really helped my students' knowledge uh, of the time period and of the conflict when they really understand, ooh, one group believed this way, and that's not wrong. The other group believed this way, and that's not really wrong either. So after that, to extend, we don't always do it. Sometimes we look at what actually happened, but it's to suggest alternate solutions. What could they have done instead? Or what do you think would have been the best solution for them to do based on these 2 points of view? This is a really fun way to do it. Of course, there's a lot of other ways to role play, but I hope you can see um, how important this activity can be and really how easy it can be. So rather than doing a PowerPoint or rather than doing a worksheet, this is an easy way to also use maybe at the end of a unit as you learn things about each of the groups before you get to what happened as a result. That would be a nice thing to do because they already know you've already talked about it. So then their position of explaining it and using their terminology and using their ideas to to support the point of view is a really great idea too. So I hope you use some role playing and add that in each night. It's a lot of fun to watch them. And they get serious about it. It's a lot of fun for the students also. They are really excited and very engaged with their character. I've seen some amazing learning through this. Speak in pictures. So, as I said, I have kindergartners. They can't always communicate in words. They don't have the vocabulary all the time to say what they mean. They usually cannot write very well yet. However, they are learning and getting better every day. So, using pictures and images helps the different communication styles. So, they use the pictures then to convey ideas that may be a little bit challenging for them to say with words, like citizenship or using the Pledge of Allegiance and deciding what each word means in the pledge. You know, pictures for our group sometimes can be an easier way. One thing to do is to give options so they can either use a picture or they can use words or they can use written things. Translating ideas through pictures is a must of critical thinking, at least in our age group, because imagine the higher order skills that they're having to use to then draw their idea. Which is not to say that speaking it and writing it is also not important, it is, but to be able to translate it into an image is also incredibly important. Sometimes when students sit down a writing activity, they don't always like it. They don't always enjoy writing. I work really hard in teaching to encourage writing and not make it a chore. And one way I've done that is by having a share time of their writing, and that has very much helped. But All of this is an important component to critical thinking because in general, drawing is not quite as apprehensive or scary to students, in my opinion, as I've taught all my grade levels, as sometimes writing and conveying those words can be. So think about that as you're developing your lessons and maybe just allow them to draw what they're thinking. Um, Sometimes while we've watched a short video or while we've listened, read a reading, or they've listened to a speaker, I'll have them do doodles. I don't know if you've seen in a lot of conferences, I've seen doodling going on, and I've seen some pictures after that. So this is not something that is even just for kids. But I'll have them doodle ideas and their thoughts, while they're listening, which is something that's much easier to do with kindergarteners than any of the other options for me. So I really like this. I really like using pictures to convey ideas. Now we're on to prioritize it. So please add some critical thinking in, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just a small thing where you just ask a question and discuss. Nothing really ever, you don't ever really create anything. You just have a discussion. Ooh, what do you think? Or maybe someone asks you a question that you don't know the answer to. That's a great time to just pull in a discussion. Well, what do you guys think? This is a great way to make sure that you put critical thinking into your lessons, is by making it a priority and just adding in something and analyzing your lessons as you go to see, have I included anything where my students are going to have to think deeply, share something that they think without repercussion or worried about a grade, um, or maybe even explain their thinking and their ideas to others. So make sure you stop while you're doing critical thinking and check for understanding periodically. Just make sure you haven't lost anyone. Maybe they haven't quite caught up with what everyone else is doing. Maybe they were daydreaming. Just do some quick understanding checks and make sure that everyone's on the same page while they're going, especially if it's a long drawn out thing. So if you use an essential question at the end of the unit, maybe at the end of every week or sometime in the week, you have a little understanding check to make sure students were with you. And then please allow time for discussion. It does not have to be long at all, but allow students to put their thoughts out there. All of these things, I feel, get students ready for some bigger, deeper thinking and critical thinking in their future careers. So if you make sure that you include some practice in your lessons, if you check and make sure the students are not getting lost, because the worst thing what you don't want is for students to think, oh, this is hard, because nobody really wants to, think and work, or maybe they do if they're super engaged, which is what we want. But sometimes these things can be a little bit more challenging, a little bit more taxing than just being a worksheet. So make sure that you're keeping them up so they're not getting frustrated. And then allowing time for discussion, and for, if nothing else, just to make sure that they know you value their opinion and their thoughts. That will help keep them going in the critical thinking skills. So I have two ideas. And this one I saw and I was amazed because I did not even at my age know that this was a really thing. So what if you create a country? So in this, you could work with history, geography, civics, politics, all of these things. Do you know there are some real life examples where people went out and created a place? And the picture you see on the right is one of those. So let me get that so I can tell you a little background. Okay, so this is the Kingdom of North Sudan, and it was founded because this American, Jeremiah Heaton, had promised his daughter she could be a princess. So he laid claim to a previously unclaimed area in to Burr Tarville, I think is how you say it. I apologize if I totally brutalized that phrase. He laid claim to this area. Um, it's an 800 square mile slice of land between Sudan and Egypt, so that his daughter could be a princess. So there are other examples of this happening. So I think finding some real life examples, or even just, I mean, in our age group, you talk about someone, their dad said they could be a princess. You'd have all the little girls going home wanting their dad to do something like this. But of why was it the right thing to do? You know, what have they done for the area? Have they benefited a lot? I mean, think about all the questions you could ask with this. So I think looking at some real life examples, why would someone want to create a country besides wanting to make their daughter a princess? Um, and then identifying their reasoning. So making sure that the students, while they're working on any project, but particularly this one also, can support why they think what they think. Not just, you know, because getting them to really think about their reasoning um, is one of the skills that we're developing in critical thinking. So I'm curious if anyone had heard about the Kingdom of North Sudan before in Burterville, but I thought that was really a neat story. And there, as I said, are others out there. In Australia, there was one that was mad about some farming laws, so he made his own kingdom to change the laws. So that's also another, you know, perfectly appropriate example of, you know, politics and people not agreeing with their government. So I thought this would be a fun activity to hit a lot of objectives in a very engaging way. So I want to make sure that I explain that correctly. So the students would actually create their own country. However, I thought about researching these examples would be interesting for them to decide, you know, how they were going to create their own. And you could make that as in-depth or not very in-depth. You really could just research the examples and learn about reasons people have done this and evaluate that. And that would be completely acceptable also. But initially I had started about them creating their own country or town, you know, community, as we talked about in kindergarten. I may not even go quite that far as country with them, but relating it to what you're teaching. And the second idea that I had was a try a sentence. I like this idea, and we've used it with my kindergartners. However, I didn't use writing with it. I used a camera. So you have a student write a sentence about a topic. The next student adds the next step under that sentence. Then they fold the paper to cover the first sentence so that only the sentence that they wrote is shown now. And then they pass it to the next person. So the next person writes the next step and folds it so only their sentence can be seen. And it would go, you know, however long you wanted. You could do this about ideas. It wouldn't have to be necessarily something that has steps, but it could be, you know, about ideas or about a time period in history. What do you know? And then all of that information gets put down on the paper. It really gives students an opportunity to focus on a particular step. They're also applying their background knowledge and having to explain themselves clearly so that the other students can understand and then add to what they wrote. I think a lot, you know, we've for several years had the stories where you add a sentence and then add another sentence and add another sentence that's funny or, you know, and that is another way to do this. But all that builds critical thinking. You have to think about what was written before then, what they know about this, how they want to proceed, and then also formulate that into something logical and reasonable that people can understand. So we've used it using a camera, so the students record themselves, and then they open their recording for the next student before they pass it. So when they pass it, that student hits play, they listen to what they said, they can play it as many times as they need to, and then they think about what they're going to say, and then record their own sentence and pass it. So this has been something that has come up with some really interesting, fun stories, whether fictional or whether we're learning about a topic and talking about something. sometimes we use it even just to share our ideas. So they listen to someone else's idea and then they add to that idea. We've used a lot of what words to use when you want to disagree with someone. So it's a great practice for students to be able to work with their peer groups and not necessarily be completely blunt and rude, because everyone's opinion has value. Um, so this has been a fun idea. So does anyone have an idea or something that they do in their classroom to increase critical thinking? And maybe something that I have talked about has interested you or brought up some idea that you'd like to try. If you would, please put that in the chat box and I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. If we see anybody, I know sometimes it takes a while to type in those chat boxes. I know my questions sometimes are overlooked because I am not a very good skilled typist at this point in my life. But I have very much enjoyed talking with all of you today about something that I'm very passionate about. My goal each day is for students to really think on their own and for them to develop ideas. As I said, I've worked in a lot of different age groups and we've had a lot of opportunity for this, but it unfortunately was not but in the last 4 or 5 years that I've really been able to release that control and allow my students to guide more of their own learning. One way to do that, even in social studies, is to have sort of like a genius hour. So they pick a topic that they want to know more about and want to learn about, maybe they want to create a project. So you give them, maybe instead of doing Fun Friday or maybe every other week, they get to research or develop or build or formulate ideas about the topic they're interested in. So we've had students that have been interested in cooking and all kinds of different things, but it just gives them a time to really explore those topics. So it looks like we're probably at the end for today. So I do want to let you know, if you have any needs about the webinar or about social studies services or any of our products, please email pgothard@socialstudies.com. We would love to hear from you, and I appreciate you all being with me today. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm going to close the session now.